Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas, and we are on pace for looking at a Happy New Year here. So, without further ado, I figured let's go ahead and look at the new or the second battle pass or progression line that is available for purchase. This is going to run you around 3,500 doubloons here on the second half of this update, which is update 14.11. Now, the previous battle pass we had the Nuremberg 44, and I was actually a very big fan of that ship. I actually loved the Nuremberg down at tier 6, and I actually wasn't that big of a fan of the Leipzig, but if we blended the two together and we gave it kind of that Elbing-ish kind of feel or shell vibes, shell characteristics, it actually turned out to be a rather fun tier 7 premium ship that they decided to stuff our stockings with, only for a low flat rate of 3,500 doubloons. Obviously, here in the second progression, this started on December 22nd. This is going to run you through January 15th, which should conclude the update of 14.11. Before we go ahead and get into the new year, which is update 15.0, you can pick up another tier 7 premium cruiser. This is the Lanzhou, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, which is under or flies the Pan Asian flag. Now, what are you basically getting with this ship? Well, you get a similar playstyle to that of, I think it's called the Tenjiang up at tier 9, and you're grabbing these Italian guns and you're pumping it down here to tier 7, more or less on a Boutonniere stylish kind of hull. This really creates a very good package and a very, very fun ship. If I'm comparing the two ships directly head to head, I think the Lanzhou is just overall a more fun ship to play. But I think the easier of the two ships, arguably the more competitive, would be the Nuremberg 44. And what that comes down to is that you have those short burst smoke screens, which is going to allow you and increase your survivability, keeping you in the fight for longer. So it kind of up tiers a little bit better. This ship is made out of complete and utter paper, as you do have a 16mm nose, a 16mm ass, a 25mm deck, and I don't even want to get into the basic numbers or the meat and potatoes of the numbers, but you have a giant exposed citadel running even past the turrets of the turret 1 into turret 3. Very easy citadel to penetrate and hit on a consistent basis. So you're going to need to use caution when flipping around and utilizing your third turret, which I do like to do in this ship because 9 shells going down range is usually better than just having 6. And making sure you know where the enemy threats are in those battleships. One thing I do want to point out on both these replays I'm going to be showcasing to you guys today, I actually did use the defensive A fire consumable. I had it slotted, but you can switch that out and go ahead and put in the hydroacoustic search consumable, which I think you should be doing because there's all in all a better consumable and you're going to be able to use that more often than not. But yeah, guys, the Lanzhou, or Lanzhou, whatever you want to call it, what does this ship do? This ship does do one thing and one thing very well. It snipes the citadels of enemy cruisers tier for tier. It's what it does. As you can see right there on the Nuremberg, we do score a double citadel around, what, 15, 16 kilometer range, somewhere around there. This ship is a lot of fun, and I can't recommend her enough to you guys. Some things that we're going to go over in regards of the ship that is worth talking about is the bread and butter, which is the main battery, the guns, right? This is why you want to pick up this ship. And it all starts with the 17.6 kilometer range. That is definitely tier 8 levels of range for cruisers. And you get that down here at tier 7. And on top of that, you get a spotter plane. Now, in testing, it actually had access to that high precision spotter plane like you see on the bungo line, and I think for balancing purposes it was actually a very good decision by Wargaming to go ahead and remove that. Now when I saw this decision was made, I was a little bit skeptical because I thought, hey, that was kind of the sole reason why you would purchase this ship. Why would I want to get it now, especially if the high precision spotter plane is yanked from the ship? And actually it's still worth picking up. This ship is just flat out a little bit more accurate than other ships. You do get some improved dispersion, I guess, on this ship a little bit. So it is nice. I don't want to go ahead and call it like anything better than what is a cruiser dispersion, but it is a little bit improved. And you will see that, I mean, again, ever so slightly, right? Especially when it comes to your horizontal dispersion. So it's going to be a little bit less of a shock any vibe, and it's not going to go higher or lower because the vertical dispersion is a little bit improved as well. So you're going to notice that too when you play with this ship. Obviously, the HE, I don't really want to go too much in depth with it, but you do have 11% fire chance, which is correlating with your, what, 10.5 second reload, I think, on this. So yeah, 10.6 second reload on this thing. You're only going to be averaging about 5.6 fires a minute, and that's without the flags or without Demolition Expert, which I highly recommend you don't pick up Demolition Expert because there's going to be better skills you're going to want to put that into. And I'll talk about the captain build here as we get later on in the video. Um, but basically, the bread and butter of the ship is the guns, and it's more specifically the armor piercing of the ship. That's what you want to really do and what you really want to utilize with the ship, because you're going to be able to snipe enemy cruisers, citadels at range, and pinpoint your shots at enemy destroyers. The only time I really found myself using the high explosive shells were on enemy destroyers, or battleships that were nose in or running away from me. I need to get that kind of damage over time fire set on them. That's really when I was utilizing the HE. But switching over to the armor piercing, where it's just more interesting of the ship. Now remember, you have initial speed coming out of the barrels at 920 meters a second, which is already fast enough as is. You have a little bit of a less drag coefficient on these shells, but you do have a higher crup, which means the shell thickness or hardness of the ship. So they're lighter shells, and they're going a little bit harder shells as well, which is kind of weird. You can overmatch 12 millimeters of effective armor, and you have that fuse time of 0.022 seconds, which isn't bad. So it doesn't need to penetrate too much armor in order to fuse that threshold to get you those Citadel ribbons. The AP damage is clocking in at 4,300 maximum damage, which is always nice to see. But again, no proved ricochet angles on these AP. This is still your standard 50 to 65 degrees ricochet angles, which isn't bad at all. Another thing to keep in mind about this ship is your torpedoes. This thing does have 8-kilometer deep water torpedoes that do hit like a truck at 15,867. That is super nice. They do have a 61 knot speed and a reaction time of 4.9 seconds. That is super nice on this ship because it does allow you to send it out for larger vessels that this ship has, I guess, a tougher time dealing with, like those pesky battleships that want to push your vessel. You can go ahead and really open up a can of whoop ass on them and do a lot of damage because those deep water torpedoes hit so hard. And the angles actually aren't that bad either to make use of these torps. Now, one thing I want to keep in mind, and one thing I want you to realize when it comes to this ship is I do find myself playing the ship very stationary. That's why in the 4th slot I recommend the prop mod to allow you to accelerate faster to reach your top engine speed sooner. So very similar to what you would see out of like a Stalingrad or a Petra, and I try to bring that here as well. But the big difference is you don't have the armor in order to mitigate a lot of your damage, especially when it comes to armor piercing from battleships. So you're going to want to utilize island coverage a lot and potentially allied smoke screens if they're ever so generous to deploy those for you. This ship cannot take a beating and doesn't have particularly that much HP either, which is what, 33,000. And a 16 millimeter nose with a massive citadel is easy to punch right through that. So enemy battleships, if you are one and you see enemy Lanzhou on the enemy team or whatever, just by all means point and click it, because there's a good chance you're going to be doing catastrophic damage to it and eliminating it from the game in a single salvo. I have noticed is that Wargaming is on a trend of making these cruisers that are usually have pretty good guns, but they just can't take a beating at all. So enemy battleships just love destroying or shooting at these cruisers, even if there's a broadside battleship closer to them, just because they know they can potentially nuke these cruisers. So if you are playing this thing, you have to use extreme caution when engaging enemy battleships, and just know where they are at on the map, and realize that if they're targeting you or if they're not targeting you. So potentially it wouldn't be a bad idea if you're a little bit more insecure about that, picking up priority target to see how many targets are aiming their main battery guns at you, right? But yeah, so this ship is going to cost you 3,500 doubloons, and then in the whole battle pass too, there's a bunch of goodies that they are going to give you, especially if you're a big fan of those kill animations. I know that the big one they released this year was like the eel that came out of the water and like snatches the ship, but that's like a big one. So if you like that, I think they're selling the Aurora Borealis one that shoots around the sky after you kill the enemy vessel, if you so happen to choose and pick up this. They're also doing a cool, unique camouflage with the ship as well, where we got for the Nuremberg 44 was a little bit more festive. I guess this is a little bit more festive as well. Looks like a little bit more like demonic, I mean, if you're asking me, but that's just me. And I'll go ahead and flash a picture on the screen here too, so you guys can see that as well. And again, it goes specifically to this vessel. So you'll also have access to that too. Again, I'm sure the Battle Pass is running you a little bit more than most just because they're stuffing more goodies in there as well. So if you were fine with the 2000 or whatever 2000 Battle Pass price, but you're not okay with the 3,500 doubloon price, well, that's just on you. It's going to be up to you whether or not you think this is worth it. For me, it's not that big of a deal, but for other players, I completely understand if that's just a little bit too much of a a hike for you and you can't justify purchasing that. And again, I know a big reason for a lot of players for picking up the battle pass, or at least the premium variant of it, is the vessel they include within the battle pass. Um, but for me, honestly, both these ships are incredibly fun tier 7 cruisers, and I can't recommend them enough. I think I will have a lot of fun with these, and especially if tier 7 rank comes in, or playing tier 7 ranked, I can easily find myself slotting both the Nuremberg 44 and the Lanzhou, as they're both offering very unique playstyles, and their guns are just so good that they really do wonders on enemy ships at this tier, especially for pinpointing hits on enemy destroyers and or cruiser citadels, right? And that being said, too, you're going to see examples of me just absolutely chunking enemy battleships, too. Now, what I like to do when it comes to Lanzhou, I know I only have 180mm guns, so I usually just aim upper armor belt on flat broadsides, and I just chunk them anywhere between 5 to 7k volleys. They're not completely uncommon at all in this thing. And it's one thing that I see battleship players do a lot is they just really don't fear a lot of cruisers in this game until their HP starts getting whittled down relatively quickly because the armor piercing is just chunking them so incredibly well. So that's definitely one thing you're going to want to keep in mind if you're fighting these things, especially in a battleship, is you got to be careful because the penetration that these AP shells have on the Nuremberg 44 and especially the Lanzhou, it's quite potent. So you got to be careful of that. But basically, I try to play this thing similarly to and this is going to be an outlandish comparison, but almost similar to my Stalingrad in forms of what I try to do with the guns. If you're familiar with how the Stalingrad plays with its main battery, that's kind of the same thing I try to do, but I don't just sit there and bow tank, and that's where the comparison ends. I'm only comparing basically the guns. So the one thing I'd like to compare it to, I think is obviously more comparable, is like the Italian, basically for just the guns format, but because the Italian has 4 turrets of 3 guns each, so 12 guns in total, you kind of play that thing a little bit more actively than rather just bow tanking, if that makes sense. So I do try to swaddle or swivel my 3rd turret into action a lot more, especially with the Italian and the Lanzhou, and utilize that because again, 9 shells is better than just 6, right? So we want to make sure we utilize that as well. Again, it all depends on the situation you find yourself in. If you're having to deal with an enemy battleship, yeah, sometimes being nose in and a hope and a prayer is kind of your best option. But if you could make use of that 3rd turret, you're just going to get better salvos and you're going to increase your damage per minute anyways. You're definitely going to want to be a little bit more opportunistic and swivel that ass end of your ship out and utilize that number 3 turret. You'll just get better results in her. Also, I think it's very crazy that they gave this thing so much range down at tier 7, and they put a spotter plane on top of that. And remember, you saw my captain build I used earlier. I actually go all in on the spotter plane, and that's not so much to increase my range. That's more so to pinpoint citadels and cruisers and destroyers in smoke screens and over islands than it is to actually get out to those ranges and deal with those ships. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be playing past 17.6 kilometers unless I'm forced to be back there based upon vacating a flank or dealing with anything on that matter, right? With anything like in regards of a flank fallen or trying to relocate, right? So, but one thing that I will mention here once we get to the second battle, because as you see, our team kind of dominated. Me and my good buddy Eagle here were able to do very good work and make use of the Lanzhou here in a tier 7 matchup, which the next game is actually going to be very good to showcase because it's showing you being up tiered into tier 8. And I think this ship does do a good job in tier 8. But again, if you find yourselves in the double up tier, which I think is bullshit anyways, it is going to be a little bit of a struggle bus for you, and you're going to have to keep your head a little bit more on a swivel and to deal with a lot of these enemy ships and enemies than you would be obviously here at tier 7 and a little bit less on tier 8. So that's the first battle as we conclude that. clocking in with an 87,000 maximum damage, which actually isn't that bad. Now here we are in the second battle, and we are finding ourselves in an up-tiered match. So let's see what I can do here in the Lanzhou. And like I said previously, this ship is a lot of fun, and I can't recommend that. I can't recommend this thing enough. Again, you're going to see this is a repetitive theme here. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but this ship is a blast, and I can't recommend it enough for what it's going to be able to do for you. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, which is worth talking about, which is actually a big part of this ship, actually comes down to the maneuverability of this ship and your rudder shift time. So I want to touch on this a little bit. So you have a max speed of 35 knots, you have an acceleration of 25.6, a rudder shift time of 8.6, and a turning circle radius of 690. One thing they keep off, like a stat that they kind of don't tell you in game at all, is actually this how much speed you bleed when you turn. And it's going to pay a lot of due to your turning circle radius, okay? This ship, when you start to turn, even ever so slightly, you actually bleed a lot of speed. And the speed that you do bleed actually plays a lot to your advantage, just because it's going to allow you to dodge a lot more incoming shells and or torpedoes. But again, when you're turning, you do bleed that speed, and that's going to translate to you slowing way down. So then starting back up is a little bit of a struggle. So if you are caught flat-footed like that, it is kind of an easier salvo for enemy ships to hit. So you're kind of down to that one trick card. You could turn real quick and dodge or dodge torpedoes, but then if they catch you trying to accelerate back, that's where they're going to punish you. So if you go into it knowing that you have this at your disposal, it is a lot of fun because you can make a lot of people's shells go in the other realm. Doesn't even look like they aimed at your ship, and throw a lot of people off. But again, if you don't know that, and you like to play a little bit more of an active style, active kiting, all that kind of stuff, this ship really doesn't do that well, just because of that massive advantage and or disadvantage depending on how you're trying to play her. So how you want to play her is kind of like how I've been showing you. You want to be a little more stationary, a little start and go, and again, utilizing islands, and in this case, allied smoke screens. If you're not willing to do that, this is not the ship for you, because you really can't play this thing as an active kiter. Like for an example, an active kiter would be like a Hindenburg. Even the Zhao kind of does more of an engine boost, but it's still like engine juking. But again, it's still more of an active kiter. This thing really isn't that. And you're going to be seeing examples of that like you are here. Now, I can't even get past 22, 23 knots of speed in a full turn just because of the way that the ship operates with its maneuverability. So it's my one big thing from this review you should take place. If you are considering picking this ship up, just know you really are locked into a certain kind of play style, because of how the engine parameters work. Okay, so hopefully you've watched the video all the way to this point and you understand what I'm trying to say, because this is the big con or pro depending on who you are as a player. Okay? Now, I do want to touch base a little bit on the commander build. I have showed you, I mentioned it already earlier on in the video. I've showcased a full commander build of what I run. One thing that is worth talking about is that skill that you see proc every now and then. This skill is an excellent skill, and I can't recommend it enough. If you go to your captain build and you get your standard 10-point commander on this ship, the one thing that is worth talking about when you pick it up is the commander skill here, which is the outnumbered skill. Now, you're going to get, no matter, the big thing is how to proc this, and this is only going to happen if there are fewer allies within your main battery firing range than there are visible enemy ships. So again, kind of putting yourself in a bad situation, especially when you have 17.6 maximum range. But if you do find yourself in that situation, you're going to get two massive pros. You're going to get -10 maximum main battery shell dispersion, which again is huge. That's getting you back to the levels of getting the bungo spotter plane like they took away from the ship, and plus 8% speed. That is huge, and I recommend that skill on this ship, because if you put yourself in situations like you see here, you can actually make use of that a lot. And those pinpointed shell dispersion shells, or whatever, salvos, excuse me, are going to translate to more citadels and more hits on destroyers than if you didn't have it. Okay, I know this. I already mentioned that the ship has it kind of baked into its ship. You have a little bit, ever so slightly better dispersion, but that's really going to put you over the edge, and it's really going to allow this ship to achieve its full potential in sniping those enemy cruiser citadels. Okay. So I really do like the outnumbered skill on this ship. Now, obviously, everything else is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to want to pick up top grade gunner, clearly, because with your max concealment build on this ship, you're rocking around like 12 point something or 11 point something, whatever it is, for concealment, which isn't like terrible at all, but you can definitely make use of that, right? I think if you go to your concealment values on this ship, it is 12.67 base, so I believe you can get it down to like 11 point something, which again is what I recommend doing, just because it's going to allow you to get into those advantageous positions and kind of be sneaky, so that when a cruiser decides to turn broadside, you can take full advantage of that, right? So, but anyways, guys, going into my final thoughts about the Lanzhou. And again, I know I've been butchering this name, so I apologize, but at least you understand, you see some footage of the ship I'm trying to talk about, right? This ship is fun. I do find this ship an incredibly fun ship, and actually fairly competitive, and which I never thought I'd be saying, because the hull is just kind of bleh. But I think this engagement on the Cheshire here in the footage here in the background is really going to showcase why this ship is so good. With the 10.7 second reload, and with the shell penetration, with this armor piercing and the flight shell speed, it really prevents cruisers from going flat broadside or showing and getting all their turrets to bear on you. Because let's be honest, a lot of ships don't only have the best turret traverse, or start, well, that too, but turret firing angles. So it allows you, if you have them in like this deadlocked kiting turn, it allows you to punish these enemy cruisers and really handicap them, because they can't justify taking the chance to show broadside enough to your armor piercing for you to sit on them to get all their guns to bear. So you really outtrade a lot of enemy cruisers, especially on one-on-one scenarios. Again, what the ship doesn't really want to do is it doesn't want to have a bow off engagement against enemy cruisers. That's not really where it's going to excel. It's going to excel at those medium to longer ranges to utilize your shell speed, your AP, your accuracy, all to your advantage. If you find yourself in those really sub 10 kilometer engagements, a lot of other cruisers are just going to outtrade you, because they can fire so much faster, and your armor really can't mitigate the incoming damage that enemy ships are going to be shooting at you, okay? Number two, I actually really like the baked in like ship bleeding speed within its turns. It turns so incredibly tightly that it allows me to throw off enemy ships, and plus with the acceleration modification in the slot 4, I can start and stop more so on a dime while having the engine bleeding, so I can really dodge a lot of incoming shells, which is what this ship wants to do, because it really can't take punishment from enemy ships, okay? Battleships are very much your nemesis in this thing, because you only have 16 millimeter plating, and I think just over 100 millimeters of effective belt armor. Again, a boutonniere hull, essentially. That's what this thing is. Okay, that's what I compare it to, and we all know that thing really can't take a beating. Massive citadel, takes up 2/3 of your damn vessel, so you're gonna need to be careful on how much side you show, especially when you're trying to incorporate that third turret. Okay, and the last thing is the package the ship, like just basically in general, what the ship is just incredibly competitive and fun. Okay, if you know how to utilize your stealth to your advantage, if you know how to position yourself accordingly, if you know enemy calibers of shells being shot at you, you can really move and finagle your way into certain situations that it's going to best benefit your vessel, so you can be basically in your element, is what I'm trying to say. And this ship offers that down at tier 7, and I think tier 7 in my opinion is my favorite tier in the game, as it is a little bit more balanced, and it's just less gimmicked bullshit that you really have to deal with. Okay, the strength of this ship falls within the ship itself. It's not reliant on a consumable or an F key, and I think Wargaming should just be releasing more ships like that rather than more F key bullshit. Just my opinion though, so tell me what you guys think. But anyways, guys, to sum this all up, super fun ship for only 3,500 doubloons, and not just the ship itself, from the cosmetics, from the extra goodies that you're going to get. It's just a really good deal, and I like this one even a little bit more than the Nuremberg 44. Though I do think the Nuremberg 44 is competitive, like I said previously, I think the Nuremberg 44 is just a safer, easier ship to play because of the short burst smoke generator, which is going to allow you extra survivability, so you're not so reliant on island and terrain. You're more reliant on yourself in order to go ahead and create your own concealment, which again is huge, right? Anyways, guys, like I always do, I will leave you on the post-battle screen. Stay tuned for more videos here within the future. And if I don't release a video before the new year, Happy New Year, guys. And I will see you all in 2026. Have a good one, guys, and peace out.